Welcome to Prayer and Prozac. I am Shari Ponder, and this is the podcast to help you understand that faith and therapy can coexist together. Or can it? Let's see now as we attempt to challenge your minds and open your hearts. Welcome back to Prayer and Prozac. It's Pastor Shari here. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as you know, we have our resident host, the Nathalia. Say hey, Michelle.
Hey, everyone.
The sanctified school psychologist. And we also have Kieyana.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, our resident millennial. So here we go. Today, we are talking about mothering. Now, as you know, we recently had Mother's Day, but we wanted to talk about how mommy needs a minute.
Yes.
Sometimes mommy just needs a minute. So when I think about all that takes place with motherhood and mothering and smothering, I'm always thinking about my mothers and what it means to be a strong Black mother. So when you guys think about your mothers and you hear the term strong Black mother or strong mother, what are some things or stories or nuances about your own mothers that come to mind? Kieyana, what you got?
So, growing up, my mom, she was all I knew. My father wasn't in my life, so me watching my mom, work 2 or 3 jobs and come home and cook for us and make sure we had everything we needed for school. Like, she was what I would say a strong Black mother. That's how I would describe a strong Black mother. Everything that my mother did for me. She made sure I was good. She made sure me and my brother and my sister had everything we needed and, took care of us in every way, emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally, being in school, and the hardships of school and transitioning and having to do that all on her own, for the most part.
Yeah. I remember you saying before that your mom was fairly young when she had you.
Yes, my mom had us when she was 20, me and my brother. So it was for a good part of my childhood. We were in survival mode. And
right.
So, just seeing her go through all those hardships to get me where I am today is just,
Wow.
speechless. Yeah, she's amazing.
We honor you, Kieyana's mom.
Yes, we honor you.
We do. Yeah, shout out to Kieyana's mom. Michelle, what's up with your mom, my Dukes?
Yeah, so happy belated Mother's Day to all you rock star moms out there.
And all those who are acting as mothers, even if you're not.
That's right. That's right. All those who are surrogate mothers, all those who have nurtured and loved and taken care of, guess what? Your mothers. So when I think about my mom is a woman that came from the Caribbean that raised 4 children in Brooklyn, New York. My mother did not play. My mother was strong. She had core values, and she ensured and made sure her children was clothed with purple. She rose early in the morning and made sure the house was clean and cooked and passed those values on. Like, I always remember her talking about, it doesn't matter how educated you are. You have to learn to cook and clean and take care of your man. And so my mother was very strong. She was fierce. And she was a woman of God, and I honor her. My mother has transitioned in 2017, but I honor her.
Amen. I love that. I have been blessed, and I'm gonna speak on behalf of people who have extra moms. I have been blessed with several people who have mothered me, but 2 mothers. So my biological mother, I was her only child, and she was amazing. I mean, just fly and sassy. like you said, cook. There must have been something to this generation of you're cooking and you're cleaning Saturday mornings. We're doing chores and, just these certain traditions that existed. I would say too, Kieyana, like you and Michelle, my mother was in survival mode. My dad and her divorced at 20 and 21. Mm-hmm. And so she was, for the time they were wealthy for, she worked at the post office. He worked at the phone company. These were really great jobs. And so she was always, when they got divorced, moving us onward and upward. We were in the hood, and then we moved up to the ghetto, and then we moved up to a suburb, and then we moved up and up and up. So her goal, like you guys said, was the strength of doing this alone primarily, and foreseeing that there was something better, getting us to, and I think that's the survival, but that strong mother of getting us to the next place.
Yeah.
A higher place. She has gone on, but my dad remarried when I was younger. And so I don't like to say step, but my other mother, my bonus mom, is also very strong. And they have different paths. They both revealed some different things. My mother, they're both very spiritual. But my other mother, my bonus mom, in addition, she was the one who got the doctorate degrees and also was in the sororities and went to the balls. And so I had the best of both worlds, seeing women survive and thrive. Yeah. And so I think any of us look at our mothers and see this strong Black mother motif. But then I began to wonder, because I would also notice that my mother would vanish every now and then. Mm-hmm. And she would go to a hotel. I'm like, Mom, where you go? She's like, I just need a minute. Like, I just need a minute away from you people, because I am carrying the load. And so my question is, at what point do we unpack strong? And at what point do we look at the fact that maybe strong is just, it's too much of a label to have all the time?
I'm so glad you brought that up, because one of the things that I looked at on the APA definition, there's a website that you can go to, or a dictionary. So the APA is the American Psychological Association, and they actually have a definition of what we call superwoman syndrome.
Okay, break it down.
That definition says a set of characteristics found in a woman who performs or attempts to perform all duties, typically associated with several different full-time roles, such as wage earner, mother, homemaker, and wife. And what I heard from you and Kieyana is that's what our mothers were. They were wage earners, they were mothers, they were homemakers, and they were wives.
So you're saying that all of them suffer from superwoman syndrome, it sounds like to me.
All of us. And I think women, so when we talk about women in general, yes. But I think historically speaking, Black mothers, historically speaking, has had an extra onus on them. And that is being Black in America, surviving, raising Black children, raising Black sons and Black daughters. There is something extra on there. Protector. You have to protect. They're worrying. They're thinking. They have the remnants historically of a community that is that's had to endure racism and biases and discrimination.
Yes. And so Shaniqua Walker Barnes has a book called Too Heavy a Yoke, Black Women and the Burden of Strength. And so it speaks exactly to that, but also on a spiritual level. So let's move into the prayer piece for Black women and the superwoman syndrome. Were your mothers praying women? Were they prayers?
Oh, my goodness. My mother can pray you out of a wet paper bag. My mother, I would laugh because sometimes I'd call her several times. I used to speak to my mother about 5 times a day. So I would call her, and when she's not answering, I'm like, well, what's going on? So I get a little, crazy, call her back to back, and she'll click over real quick and say, I'll call you back. I'm on the phone praying. Like, that's what she did. She was like an unofficial prayer ministry of her church.
Okay.
Very praying woman. But I also knew when things were getting to her. I also knew because she would pray and pray, and she can spend several hours in prayer. But I tell you, she'd come out of her prayer closet, and you like, you sure you don't want to go back in that prayer closet?
Yeah, funny. Kieyana, what about your mom?
Yeah, my mom definitely is a praying mom. Anytime I need her, to pray for me, whether I'm going into an interview or when I was in grad school and taking my exit exams, or anytime I was just having a hard day, I would just call her and just, and still to this day, call her and ask her, like, Mommy, I need you to pray for me. I need you to pray with me. And also, it goes the other way around too. I pray for her and she prays, we pray together. So yeah, definitely.
So here's the question. My concern is, if there's so much praying, we don't know what their Prozac was. By Prozac, again, we don't always mean just the pills, but how did our mothers cope outside of prayer? Because we all know that they were praying. Because I do believe that there also some of this burden is in going to God in prayer about things. Absolutely, yes. But the burden of being superwoman might also be biblical. So I was teaching in my small group, Trap Thursdays for the Ratchet Righteous, shout out. And I was so excited to share the Proverbs 31, 10 through 31 virtuous woman. Like, oh my gosh, because y'all know this is how, well, Kieyana, maybe not you, but Michelle and I know that this is how we were raised. Like, this is what our mothers and grandmothers and great-grandmothers wanted to be. Like, we needed to be this virtuous woman. And I have a few seconds, I'm going to just read a little bit. But this was a bad chick. Like, she could do it all. A wife of noble character who can find. She's worth far more than rubies. Her husband has her confidence. She brings him good and no harm. She selects wool and flax, and she's like a merchant ship. She gets up while it's still night. She goes to bed early. She stays up late. She considers a field she buys. She works hard and vigorously, and no one is better than her. She is a G.
Yes.
After I read this, see what I'm saying, Michelle? Yes, we're like, yes, this is who we want to be. I read this to my small group, and they were like, ain't nobody got time for all of that.
Right.
And so, Kieyana, is that what your generation is feeling? Because I was floored because this was my mother. This is who I was striving to be. And then I have a whole new perspective on it. And maybe that's why our mothers were maybe a little burnt out for trying to reach this. What are you thinking about this? How do you feel?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like, too, when it's just the mother doing it, right. She has to fulfill that role. And so, I mean, of course I saw my mom fulfilling all these roles, but we're in 2020, like there's, different. All
right now, millennial.
She's like, where is her self-care?
Right. Where's the self-care? And that's, probably why our moms, I didn't see, I saw my mom be stressed out, but my mom, held it back a lot. So I couldn't really tell when she was stressed and when she wasn't. And it took me a long time to figure out that my mom is a human. Like, she has emotions too. Right. So, and it still surprises me, like, when she gets upset, I'm like,
right,
Mommy,
right.
I didn't know that you cried and you got angry and that you got stressed.
Okay, I think that is an excellent, excellent point as we move into our next segment. The fact that you said that you didn't realize that your mother was human.
Yeah.
So these are some myths. So first we're talking about being a strong Black woman and being superwoman. We're talking about how we are almost now completely anti-Proverbs 31. Although I think there's some wonderful, beautiful pieces in there, things that we should still strive for. We're all in agreement that maybe over the course of her life, she can do all these things, but all women need some self-care. And mommy definitely needs a minute if she's doing all of this. But as we consider whether or not and how we did not even see our mothers as human because we didn't see them cry, or when the first time we did see them cry or actually did see them hurt. That's a huge, that moves us into kind of these motherhood myths. Mm-hmm. So what are some other myths that might be tied to motherhood? I can think of one. I know sometimes when I watch a TV, God forgive me, but this is the truth. People are like, having my children were the greatest thing that ever happened to me in my whole life.
Girl.
It was really wonderful. I don't know if it's the single greatest thing for me. I love my kid. Or I remember watching the Golden Girls once. Y'all know that's my show. And she skipped this concert because her kids were sick. And she says, you know, it's one of those times as a mother where you pretend that your child's well-being is more important than something you really want to do. So what are some other things that are kind of myths about motherhood and mothering?
That you always enjoy being a mother.
Definitely. That's a big
That
one.
is a myth.
I know people who are like, and it might be true for some people. Maybe that's it. I know some people like, I love being pregnant. There was nothing greater in the whole world. I was like,
but I love being a mother. I love mothering. That's who I am.
I think the myth, though, and I guess the biggest myth,
is that we always enjoy it.
Yes, that every single moment is enjoyable. But I guess that goes back to our original point. If you see your mother crying, Kieyana was saying that she was like, oh my gosh, what then with the myth ties back to prayer and Prozac? Because if they were already praying, I guess the myth is that they never got depressed, that there's never sadness, that there was never, depression. Like I said, my mother, to me, when I looked up and my mother was going to a hotel to get away from us, that mommy needs a minute, clearly there was something there where she was having some bouts of sadness or overwhelmness or anxiousness that she would never, I don't believe that generation would ever admit to having any kind of mental illnesses or mental challenges.
Or struggle at all with regulating emotions.
Yeah.
They just didn't have time for it. They didn't have time to talk about regulating emotions. I mean, I hear you and Kieyana talk about your moms being single moms. My mom wasn't a single mom. I had a dad physically in the home, but my dad was not emotionally or mentally or spiritually present. And my dad brought a lot of drama to our home. I grew up in a home that was marred by a lot of domestic violence, a lot of, verbal violence. So for me, seeing that and experiencing that, they didn't have time to so emotionally regulate. They had to survive. They had to be able to, raise children, productive children. One of the myths for me, like you said, Shari, is that, mothers don't go through, depressions and anxiety. That's how I felt. I never saw my mother cry. Yes. I never saw her cry. I saw her cry when her mom died and when my cousin committed suicide. And then the year that my mom passed away, she was so dysregulated that I thought maybe it was her hormones, but I never throughout my childhood, enduring and seeing the things that my mother went through as an adult. Kieyana, I applaud you in your 20s that you're able to say, wow, my mother is human. I was 40, 41 before it even hit me. Wow, I never saw my mom cry. I never heard my mom cry. Like that is not normal. So you ask, what was her Prozac? I think her Prozac was her prayer. I think her Prozac was her prayer because I remember my mom always saying, if it had not been for God, I would have lost my mind. And I never understood it until I walked life and could truly understand that it was God and prayer that regulated her, that kept her just in survival mode.
Yeah.
I love that. I think to add to the myths, I think another myth is that all women want to be mothers.
Ooh, drop mic, walk off the stage. Come on now.
There are a lot of women who are very content with the lives that they've chosen for themselves. And some of them have, married into families where they become mothers, but have not wanted more kids or have been sufficiently satisfied with their own lives as they are. And I know that sometimes they get looked at oddly, but not all women want to be mothers, or not all women make good mothers.
Pastor Bay, you crossing some lines this morning.
Listen, I'm telling you, I have met women who probably don't need to be mothers. I think that we all have seen that, particularly Michelle and Kieyana, you guys working in mental health and me having been a former school counselor. And I think some of it's because maybe they didn't want to be. Back to the first, the other myth, that they did not want to be, and then they were, and maybe it just wasn't all that it needed to be. I had a friend, and she was a great mother, but she said, and her kids were, one was in college and one was a senior. She's like, I'm going to be kind of done. And she's like, you know what? I hate to say this. She's like, but I didn't have to have these kids. And she loved them. But again, it's back to, you're not a woman, or you're not a woman if you're not. Another one could be, that you're not a real woman unless you are a mother. And I remember my cousin telling me this when we would have these round tables with the family. She was like, I have degrees and I have experiences, but these elders, because I don't have a child, they're not listening to me. Yeah. I don't have any credibility.
Absolutely. Well, I remember feeling that with my younger sister. I had children before my sisters did, and I didn't want to hear anything they had to tell me, because unless you are a mother, you cannot talk to me. You cannot tell me anything about being a mother. I mean, I remember feeling that. I remember thinking that. And thinking that is you're disqualified or not qualified to bring anything to the table, when in actuality, that probably is not necessarily true.
No, absolutely. Now, Kieyana, let me ask you this, and I think we talked about this before, because I felt like, when we were coming up, again, it was this virtuous woman, so you had to jump all in with spouses and kids and everything else. But I don't see that with your peers. Mm-mm. It's like motherhood and parenthood is very important, but, many people aren't prepared.
Right.
Or don't want to, or they're good like they are. I feel like it's a little different with your group.
Yeah. I have friends who have children, and to go back to Michelle's point really quick, I find it interesting because my friends who have children, and it might just be because we're in our 20s, but they look to us. We look to one another for support and for community. So say my friend is having trouble with her son saying no or something like that. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, have you tried this? Have you tried that? And
she takes your advice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and taking that in, because I feel like it goes back to that community vibe, like the village vibe.
Okay.
And then to go back to your point, Pastor Bay, I feel like a lot of my friends have been put in a situation where, wow, now I'm a mom. Some planned, some unplanned. But my mom always says, life is what happens while you're making plans. And so I feel like, although they aren't prepared or they weren't prepared, well, they're prepared now. But although they weren't prepared at the moment, like, they made it work. And, we all look to each other. I don't have any children. I would like to have children someday, but it's fun just babysitting and playing that role for a little bit.
No, I totally feel, and you should. I'm thinking about even knowing women of various ages And so there's the myths, but there's also the microaggressions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel bad, and you think mental illness and needing Prozac and whatever your Prozac is, whether that's pills or meditation or yoga, mindful meditations. But I had a lot of friends have microaggressions because people are always asking and causing anxiety for people who don't have children. So whether they are just, there's judgment, there's some condemnation. And so, when are you having kids? And they don't know that maybe you're trying, or they can't, or maybe you don't want them, or maybe you're in a relationship, you're trying to figure out the details. But that's problematic. I don't think people realize how much stress they cause other people. How much stress they cause women, asking them, well, why don't you have kids? Or when are you going to have kids? You have one kid, and it's like, well, when are y'all going to have another one? And so how can we kind of get the word out to stop that oppression?
But is that generational? Because I hear Kieyana said something that's so important. I mean, it might be a Generation X thing, because in Generation X, we don't want anybody telling us how to raise a child if you don't have a child. But I hear Kieyana saying, well, for us, we're a community. We'll talk to each other. Is that generational? I know in our generation, Shari, there definitely is this taboo, and especially within the church. Okay, because within the Christian community, there definitely is this sense of, if you're not a mother, it's a curse. If you're barren or you're not having kids, it's a curse. Is there a generational difference, Kieyana?
I think that that mindset has transferred over into our generation, because I see now more us putting pressure on ourselves to be mothers more than our elders or our parents putting pressure on us to have children. Like, my mom tells me all the time, like, no, I'm not ready to be a grandmother, but I'm like, but I want you to be a grandma. and my friends also, I've had a few friends that have had, issues with like cysts, being on their ovaries and things like that. And so now they're putting more pressure on themselves to have children now, because they're like, what if I can't have a child? So even if, people are pressuring them, like, people have to understand that sometimes we're pressuring ourselves. And I don't know if that comes from the generation before us. I don't know if that's because we're taught that we have a biological clock. I don't know where it comes from, but sometimes, like you said, like, we might be going through our own personal reasons, trying to have a child or thinking about having a child. And then we have this other person coming and saying, when are you have kids? When are you going to give me some grandkids?
So what you're basically saying is we have Black women who have tried to be super women, who have labored and loved and been about survival. We have a biblical text that leads us in that direction. We have prayer that can be a form of Prozac. Or we have the church, and you mentioned this one time before, Michelle, as an addiction to a way of escaping some of the trauma that we go through and not knowing how to deal with it as mothers. And then we have the myths of what it should look like and should feel like and should be like that we're not always honest about. And then finally, there are the microaggressions, that you are looked at a certain way and people say things to you, even though they have no clue what's going on in your house, no clue what's happening with your prayer or your Prozac. So then let's look at, how do you know if some of the stress of all the stuff we just talked about, how do you know if this is just regular motherhood, everybody's getting on my nerves, stress, or if you are leading into a mental health issue because of any of the things aforementioned? How do you know if it's more than just a bad day or something that you need to, after you've prayed, after you've gone to church and maybe talked to your pastor, after you've, maybe gone to someone, one of the other mothers to get advice? What does that look like as our therapist? What does that look like for knowing when it's more than that, and then what to do?
So I think that's a good question. I think mental health is a personal journey. And it's different for many different people. It's different because of our biology. It's different because of our level of coping. It's just a different thing. Someone might react very differently to a child failing a test than another mom. And this really quick, what I want to bring up too is that mothers, we have to stop gauging our success as mothers based on the success of our children, especially as we lead into graduation, especially as we lead into everyone announcing where our children is going and decision day. And this may have been part of the last segment, but another microaggression which we as women do is we base how well someone has been a mother on their child's success. Stop doing that. Okay, stop internalizing the successes and the failures of your children. So that can also be a part of mental health. So how do you deal with that? How do you deal with knowing that this is just a transitioning emotion, a transitioning situation, or something that's lingering? Whenever, I always tell my clients, whenever something is superseding the DSM, which is the Bible of the APA, the American Psychological Association, we look to that to gauge. It tells you all these different mental and emotional and personality criteria that you would have to meet to get labeled as depressed or anxious or obsessive compulsive disorder. And a lot of it says if emotions, sadness, loss of interest, insomnia, difficulty sleeping, or sleeping too much, not eating, overeating, if it lasts for more than 2 weeks, you might want to seek help from a therapist. Most people say go to your medical doctors. Medical doctors are not equipped. They are not therapists. Medical doctors will listen to you about 5-10 minutes and give you medicine, and you go on about your way. Seek out the help of a therapist. Seek out the help of someone that you can talk to. If there's a problem and it's lingering, if you go away for a vacation and you come back, you're in despair, you're not sleeping, you're restless, you're moody, you're cranky, you're crying, you're eating too much, you're not eating enough, there's sudden weight loss, you lose interest in activities. Or the flip side of that, many people who are suffering with bipolar disorder, they're hyper, they're not sleeping, they're up, they're spending money, they start projects, they're writing 5 books at a time. There's a problem. Seek help. Seek help.
Are any of those symptoms similar in postpartum? I know that's something that mothers do experience. And how long does that last?
So postpartum is like a whole nother topic. And if you have just had a baby, so here's the difficulty with postpartum depression and having just had a baby. Many of your symptoms or symptomologies will be very similar, right? You're not sleeping because your baby is constantly waking up. After you've had a baby, there's a sudden drop in your estrogen and your other hormones. And as those hormones drop, your body is trying to re-regulate. If you begin to have difficulties with managing and regulating your emotions after about 3-4 months, seek the help of a therapist. Rely on your partner, rely on your parents, talk to someone. Chances are people within your family, as we talk about myths, people within your family endured this, and they will help you understand what may be going on with you. I mean, nowadays there's a lot of pressure on breastfeeding. I encourage new moms. I'm sorry, what was that, Shari?
No, I'm saying yes, there was. I mean, when I decided not to breastfeed after 3 days, I almost needed a small group. I mean, I was literally hazed and harassed.
Yes. So that's another pressure of motherhood. Breastfeed, I did not enjoy breastfeeding. I'm sorry. I know a lot of people say, oh, it's bonding. I did not enjoy it. I found a lot of other ways to bond with my newborn. But if depression, if sadness, if inability to interact with your infant becomes pleasurable, whether cuddling or loving or hugging, it is not pleasurable. There may be something more going on with you. If you are afraid or anxious, these are all symptoms of something else is going on. Seek the help of a therapist.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Kieyana, as our resident alternative therapist, we know, one, you need to pray. That's me. You got to start there, but you don't end there. Michelle just mentioned going to therapy. Can you give us some other ways of how mommies can take a minute? If they need a minute, what can they do? Like maybe I'm good. I am praying, or I've talked to someone, but I'm okay as far as for therapy. But what can I do like daily or weekly to help get that minute in that I need?
Yeah. So first, self-care has to be scheduled. It can't be something that's off the whim, because our lives and our being who we are, our bodies work off schedule. So when you schedule something, more than likely you'll follow suit. So I tend to tell people to schedule self-care. I do my self-care on Sundays. I call it self-care Sundays.
So schedule it and give it a title, a thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I like it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And self-care can pretty much be anything. Pinterest has a lot of ideas. Google has a lot of ideas. But typically you want to have something where you're relaxed. So maybe a bubble bath, a mask, light a candle. And you typically want to be uninterrupted. So I would put my phone on do not disturb. I will make sure, the children have somewhere to go, even if it's only for an hour, like just for you to sit with yourself and relax. You can also...
Let me ask you something real quick. Now that's different from time with your significant other, right?
Yes, totally different. Self-care is you.
Okay, go ahead.
That's yes, you by yourself. Something you also can do at night when you're going to sleep. YouTube has tons of helpful like sounds, nature sounds, and it's this thing called binaural beats. And binaural beats is something that connects like to the energy and the chakras and things like that. Chakras, energy, life forces. I'm getting a little off topic a little bit, but
no, that's good. But how do you spell that?
Binaural beats, BINUARAL beats, binaural beats. Okay. And it kind of helps us tap in a little bit. It kind of goes into meditation as well, if you're comfortable with doing meditation. But yeah, definitely schedule your self-care and make it something that you don't do all the time. Like if you do a mask every day, then don't do a mask. Or if you do a face mask every day, maybe do a foot mask. Or maybe listen to a different type of meditative music. Like do something that you don't do all the time, and make sure that it's something that is loving on yourself, uninterrupted.
Uninterrupted loving on yourself. I love that.
I love that.
Me too.
That was so sacrilegious in my time being a mom of small children.
You need a minute. You needed a few hours.
Or taking it meant I was selfish.
That's another one, that the guilt of doing something for yourself. So I'm going to add to what Kieyana said. And when you're scheduling your self-care, relinquish the guilt and the shame that your kids cannot live without you for 30 minutes a week. Relinquish the guilt and the shame that you can't take a minute to regroup, because it is like the airplane, when they go over the safety rules, they say, put your mask on first before you put it on your child. And that is the truth. If you are not taking your minute, taking your time, then you cannot care for someone else. I remember once, and I'm okay with sharing the story because I told my kid this story. She laughs about it now, but it was significant for me. My daughter was, had recently divorced, and I was washing her hair, and she was about 5, so she was fidgety, and it's old school. So I had her laying on the counter, and her head was in the sink, so I could use the spout to do her hair, to water it and to wash it. And she was jerky and fussy and fidgety, and I was snatching her up and grabbing her and flipping her, and I'm like, come on, because I'm tired and I'm stressed and I got to go here and I got to go there and you're not working with me. And she looked at me. She said, do you like children? Oh my gosh. I was shocked. I was hurt. Of course, being a mother, I had a rebuttal. I was like, yes, I just don't like children that don't behave. But, mother always got something for you right back, right? But after that, I thought about it. Once I got her settled, that was probably the first time I took a minute.
That is so your child.
Yes, because I was like, I love my kid, but I'm clearly overwhelmed to the point where she has to ask me, not even her, do I even like kids? I was like, that's not good. That means she can feel it in my hands.
Yes, your energy. In
my energy, my hands, my tone. And I apologized, later when she could understand. And I did. That was the first time I recognized that I needed a minute, and I began to take them. And so I want to encourage anyone who's listening, whether you're a mother, a mothering, a smotherer, an auntie, a niece, if you're nurturing in any way,
absolutely,
then definitely take your minute. Did you guys have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yes, when you said selfish earlier, people feel that they're being selfish. I learned that selfish is when you're doing something that another person doesn't want you to do.
All right now.
Yeah.
That's good, because I think all in all, I think our children and our husbands, our significant other, would want us to take care of ourselves, because when you are well, then you can take care of other people. Mm-hmm. I just wish for me growing up, and I speak from a Caribbean perspective, that one of the things that I feel is transferred is this sense of when you take care of yourself as a Caribbean woman, self-care, even right now within the Caribbean, self-care is a non-existent word. It's a non-existent word. So I echo your sentiment, Shari, is that we've got to push past the rhetoric. We've got to push past the self-talk that is negative, and you've got to, and I encourage you to take care of yourself. It is not selfish. Look at it this way, like Kieyana said. You have to look at it from a perspective of, you want me to take care of myself. Like, you really want me to take care of myself. So then that way I can be the best for you.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So anyone who's a mommy needing a minute, take your minute, girl. Take your second, take your hour, take your day. But thank you for taking a minute to hang out with us today. We want you to tune in next week as we delve more into prayer and Prozac and all that it entails with being booed up, loneliness, and everything that looked like going into and coming out of quarantine. Make sure you join the Prayer and Prozac Facebook group, as well as follow Prayer and Prozac on Instagram. And in everything, we thank you, we love you, and we hope that you can find the balance in it all. Our handles are at Prayer and Prozac and Prayer and Prozac Facebook group. Love us, like us, want more of us, share us.
And talk to us.
And get the help you need. Find the balance, and we'll see you next week. Or here, you can